Patient rights. Congress passed the Patients' Bill of Rights in 1998. This act was designed to give patients basic rights and not leave them at the mercy of healthcare providers. Patients have the right to understand their conditions, treatment, and options, as well as receive respectful treatment. It gave the patient the right to make their own decisions regarding their care. Doctors and nurses provide information to the patient that they need to make the best choices for themselves. A big part of their job is educating patients. In almost every clinical setting, the patient is truly the boss. The physician can direct their care, but only with the consent of the patient. Patients can choose their healthcare providers, and the service you provide can affect the patient's decisions on where to receive their care. Unfortunately, all too often, healthcare workers tend to treat patients like they have no rights. Patients are the reason we have a job. Patients should be a partner in their healthcare, not a prisoner. Patients have the right to refuse care. They have the right to request new caregivers. They have the right to select new physicians, hospitals, or even entire treatment teams. They are the ones in charge of their care, not us. We should treat them like customers. They pay the bills. Just as importantly, every patient deserves the ability to make their own choices and be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of whether we agree with those choices. Healthcare professionals must choose to act professional, even if the patient doesn't. This is not always easy. You must overcome your own prejudices and ideals and not impose your own standards on your patient. When you're having a tough time, try to put yourself in your patient's place. How would you feel if it were you? Let's talk about Mabel. Mabel is a very sweet lady who's 84 years old. She's very active and independent, and she lives in her own home. Her husband, Frank, passed away last year. They had been married for 65 years. Mabel and Frank married after the war and settled in a large city up north. Frank worked as a newspaper editor, and Mabel ran a bookstore 3 blocks from their apartment. They raised 3 successful daughters, who each went on to raise their own families. They retired 20 years ago and moved to Florida, where they bought a nice house in an upscale subdivision built specifically for seniors. Just over a year ago, Frank died. This was a very hard time for Mabel. She had devoted her life to him, and she felt very lonely. But life does go on. Mabel had never learned how to drive. When living up north, she had always walked to work or taken the train into the city. After retiring to Florida, Frank had done all the driving. But with Frank gone and no bus service in their subdivision, Mabel was going to have to learn how to drive. Mabel did pretty well. A few dents now and then, but no major accidents. Of course, she always took the back roads, drove really slow, avoided traffic whenever possible, and concentrated really hard. Things were going okay until the day she was at the doctor's office to get her test results back. It wasn't good news. She was very upset when she got into her car to go home and wasn't concentrating very well. She thought she was in reverse, but was actually in drive. This was the 3rd time she had made that mistake, and this time she drove right into a tree. Thank God no one was hurt seriously. But now the insurance company was dropping her coverage. She wasn't going to be able to drive anymore. How would she get her prescriptions, go grocery shopping, keep her doctor's appointments? Mabel called her oldest daughter, Linda. Her daughter was very alarmed and very concerned for her mother's health. She told Mabel that she had a few vacation days available and would come down next week for a visit. Linda flew in on the following Thursday morning, rented a car, and took Mabel out to lunch. Linda started by saying, "Mom, you really scared us. I talked to Susan and Jenny and told them what happened to you. We are really lucky you didn't get hurt. You know you shouldn't drive anymore. It's just too dangerous for you and everyone else." Now, I know you're probably not going to agree right away, But we girls have discussed this and we've made a decision. It's simply not safe for you to live alone anymore. We all live so far away, and with work and our families, we simply can't drop everything to rush down here all the time. So we've looked at all the options, and we picked a place that looks lovely. It has all the features you would want in a home, with staff that cooks and cleans for you, and nurses right there. I called, and they're all so nice. So we made the decision and put down a deposit. They're expecting you on Saturday. I know it's quite a shock, but really, it's the only sensible solution. I bet you'll love it once you get settled in. It is a bit expensive and not covered by insurance, so you may have to dip into your savings for a few months until we can get the house sold. You simply can't afford a private room, so you'll have to share a room with a roommate, but the staff said they'll try to find a good match for you. However, the rooms are rather small, and you're only able to take 2 suitcases of personal effects with you. That means that we're going to have our work cut out for us wading through over 80 years of memories to get you down to 2 bags. We'll have a yard sale tomorrow and get rid of the big furniture and such. And that reminds me, we're going to have to do something about your car. That nice young man who cut your yard, wasn't his name Tommy? He could certainly use a new car now that his young wife is expecting. I'll contact him tomorrow and see if he's interested. Now, don't you worry about a thing, Mom. I've got everything handled. You just concentrate on packing your stuff up. I have to catch an early flight home on Sunday, so we have to get you settled in on Saturday. I'd stay longer if I could, but I have a big presentation next week and have to get back to work. Mabel was crushed. She didn't want to go live in a retirement home. She wanted to stay in her own home, the one she was comfortable in. She didn't want to give up her personal possessions that she had worked hard for. She didn't want to give up her independence, her dignity, or her pride. Mabel argued with her daughter. She was sure there were other options, but had no idea where to start. She didn't think she could afford home care. She didn't even know how to go about arranging for some help. And what if she didn't get along with the caregiver? What if the caregiver was mean or a thief? Linda pointed out that with no family here to help, Mabel could easily be taken advantage of. Mabel asked about moving closer to her family. Linda had already checked into that before flying down, but the facilities in their area were even more expensive than in Florida, and she had no room in her apartment for her mother. Plus, Mabel just couldn't take the cold weather anymore. Linda finally said to Mabel, "Look, Mom, I have everything planned out. I know it's difficult for you, but really, it would just be easier if you would allow me to see to the details. I just know that when you get there, you'll love the freedom of not having to keep up with a house or to cook. And think of all the new friends you're going to make. You'll finally have time to socialize or join a club." "But what about Sadie?" Mabel asked suddenly. "Mom, Sadie can't go with you. They don't allow dogs in this facility," Linda replied. "But I can't leave her. What will happen to her? She's almost 12 years old." "I'll take care of it. We'll find a nice home for Sadie. I know you love her, Mom, but she needs room to run and play. You can't even walk her around the block anymore. Is that really fair to her? I'm sure your shelter will find a wonderful family for Sadie." In the end, what choice did Mabel have? With her heart broken, she went home and began to pack. She sifted through pictures, keepsakes, and clothes, trying to decide what to take. It was an exhausting, humiliating, depressing, an unbelievably impossible task. Mabel just wanted to lie down and never wake up. The next day, she sat in her favorite chair and watched her car drive away. She listened to her daughter and the realtor discuss how to market the house. There were people all over, discussing how her couch would look in their living room and making ridiculously low offers on her dining room set. She refused to get out of the chair when a gentleman said he had just bought it and needed to get it loaded up. She knew it wasn't his fault, but really didn't care at the moment. Linda gave him his money back and lectured Mabel on being more gracious. She couldn't stop crying when Linda loaded Sadie up in the rental car. She locked herself in her room and refused to talk to Linda when she returned from dropping Sadie off at the shelter. Saturday morning came, and Mabel couldn't eat. She had lost her appetite. Linda kept up a constant stream of chatter, trying to cheer her mother up, but Mabel barely spoke. She wanted her life back. Why did Frank have to die and leave her all alone? Linda began to get irritated with her mother. Mabel was admitted to your nursing facility today. She's the little old lady sitting in her room, looking out the window, barely eating or talking. She feels unwanted, neglected, depressed, and angry. This was not how her life was supposed to end. In 3 short days, she has lost her home, her belongings, her car, her companion, her independence, her dignity, her self-worth, and her reason for living. How are you going to treat her? Are you going to see an old, grumpy woman that refuses to eat or shower or do what you tell her to because she's just plain mean? Are you going to ignore her or complain about her or force her to cooperate because you have a schedule to keep and a job to do? Or are you going to realize that she has had a tremendous change and is unable to cope? Can you be supportive, caring, kind, and compassionate? Can you remember that she is a person, someone that needs to feel needed? The choice is yours. But remember, one day you may find yourself in Mabel's shoes. How do you want to be treated if you find yourself an unwilling patient, trapped in a life you didn't plan for, with very few options? Most of your patients have a story similar to this. Please remember that these patients are people. Every person has a story. Every person deserves respect. Every person needs to be cared about as much as they're cared for. To you, this is 8 hours out of your day, and your focus is probably on the paycheck at the end of the week. To them, this is life. Make your time with them count for something. You may be the only bright spot in their day. Ensuring that you treat each patient with respect, privacy, and dignity is important. Knowing that we're not there to control them, that we respect their right to refuse care, that we encourage them to be as independent as possible, and that we're only there to help them is one of the most important jobs we have as caregivers. Patients have rights, and that's important. In healthcare, it's always about the patient, never about you. The end. This presentation is over, but continue watching for information on how to obtain in-service credit for this program. To achieve in-service credit, you must take a brief quiz located on our website. This is free for all participants. Go to our website located at www.4YourCNA.org. That's the number 4, YourCNA.org. If you've already created an account with 4YourCNA.org, simply log in with your username and password. If you've never visited our site before, simply click on the Create New Account link. Registration is free and easy. Once you've logged in, click on the name of the video you just watched under the CNA In-Services heading. Now click on the link for that quiz. You can take the quiz as often as you'd like. When you score a 70% or greater, you'll receive an in-service certificate. Click the link below to be redirected to our site to take the quiz. Good luck!